Goddess, I love women.
I love women so much. I want to be one when I grow up.
I love women so much.
I love women, and I especially love my girlfriend. I love women so much.
Yeah, you guys are great.
I love women.
All women are beautiful. I'm a fan of women. I don't know whose this is. This is just out in the hallway. I love women, and also I am one.
I love women!
I love my girlfriend. He is my soulmate, and I'm going to make him my wife one day.
Bliss thy beauty brings that a god might envy.
I love women so much.
You guys are great. Yes, I get it.
My girlfriend actually made this jacket for me. This is so cute. His pet name for me is Peaches. Ugh. I could talk about my soulmate for hours, but I'm not going to, not in this video anyway, because this video isn't about that. This video is about women, because it's Women's History Month. I love women. Can you tell? It's why I was so disappointed in Grease. The whole film was just so awful to women. I understand that Grease was meant to be a parody of the 1950s. It was meant to be satire, making fun of it even. But the issue is that sometimes when you do something in order to satirize it, you just end up doing it and becoming part of the problem. It's why something like Grease: Rise of the Pink Ladies is so important. By having women both in front of and behind the camera, we're able to actually get insight onto another perspective from this hyper-masculine culture. The patriarchy isn't just a buzzword. It is well alive in the world of Grease, and it is very well represented. I do think it's a little unfair to compare a television series of any length to a movie, because a movie only has a few hours to do what a television series can do in 10 or 20. However, it's not the amount of time you have, it's what you do with it, and I felt that Grease, the film, didn't utilize its time well. The story is absolutely terrible, as good as the performances and the choreography and the music and the mise-en-scène, as good as all those things are, the story, at the end of the day, is just bad. Grease: Rise of the Pink Ladies actually aims to develop its characters, to actively solve its conflict, and the love feels real. There are so many romantic relationships in this show, including a sapphic one, and it's incredible. I was very much grossed out by Olivia's relationship with her teacher because she was 16 in the show, but the relationship happened the year prior for the most part, which means that a 15-year-old and a teacher who's like, I don't know, in his 30s, maybe late 20s at youngest, they were dating. That's terrible. That's awful. I think it was meant to be, but I still didn't like it. So even if it was meant to be, then congratulations, you achieved your goal. You made me uncomfortable. But overall, the story was incredible. Seeing how these characters change and grow with each other, it was fantastic. The way that they all talk, even if they don't have the exact diction to describe their feelings, you can still get it just from the acting alone. It's one of the greatest shows that I've ever seen. It's definitely my new Willow. Grease: Rise of the Pink Ladies and Willow actually have many similarities. They're both expansions of a legacy film from the late 20th century. They're both using that film to be in a genre that doesn't really have a lot of diverse representation, and to give that representation to that genre. And they were both streaming original services in 2023 that were removed. What? Yeah, Grease Rise of the Pink Ladies premiered on Paramount Plus as an exclusive series, just to be taken down less than a month after the final episode came out. If I remember correctly, the final episode came out June 6th and it was removed on June 22nd. 16 days. The last episode had 16 days on Paramount Plus before it was removed. Now, unlike Willow, Paramount is at least releasing DVDs of the series, so it still exists. It's not lost media, but it's still absolutely awful to see all of the work and love that was put into this series. And it led into a second season, only for it to just evaporate, fading away like the picture of unkept film. That actually leads me to my next topic of discussion, Shoes by Lois Weber.
Hi, Editing Dahlia here. When I was recording this, I didn't realize that there was not only a colorized version of this film on YouTube, but that it was also from a higher quality reel than the version that I watched in class. So I'm going to be using footage from that. There's a link in the description. I highly recommend checking it out.
Yeah, we're going way back for this one. Shoes came out in 1916. If you don't know, that's before the proper implementation of color in film and before sound was properly implemented in film. When I say properly implemented, I mean the way it was today. Obviously, art is subjective and you can do anything you want with it. But it is much more convenient to just have an audio track with the film rather than have someone playing a piano alongside your movie. Additionally, I mentioned the proper implementation of color because silent films actually do have color. They just dye the film reels different colors in order to create different effects. Shoes is mostly yellow with the exception of one scene that is blue, which is meant to take place at night. So the reason why this is here is because when I watched it in my Intro to Screen Studies class, we were learning about the beginnings of the film industry and about how it was actually dominated by women like Lois Weber. Film studios saw women as the target audience because men were at work for the most part. So who better to make movies for women than women? It's a business model that is weirdly progressive for the 19-teens, but maybe that's just due to my own misconceptions about history. Of course, when men figured out that movies were a lucrative business, they pushed all the women out of the industry, and many of their films were poorly archived. It's a real shame, too, because this film is beautiful. It follows the story of a woman living in poverty who needs new shoes, hence the title of the film. She barely makes any money and is the one supporting her entire family. Her deadbeat father won't get a job, and so she's working her shoes down to their soles. They just will not stay together, and by the end of the film, they're completely destroyed, especially because a rainstorm came. Because of the way the shoes are falling apart, her feet are routinely hurting. She's physically hurting because she can't get a basic necessity like shoes. Meanwhile, there's this creepy rich guy who wants a good time and is willing to pay for it with the main character. She rejects him because she doesn't want to do that, but as time goes on, she has to sell herself in order to get the necessities that she needs. I would have put a spoiler warning before this, but Shoes does the same thing that Romeo and Juliet does and tells you what happens at the beginning. I'm glad that I was prepared, but it doesn't make it any less sad. The way that it's told, too, is incredible. Shoes is a movie that uses intertitles, which is this. But because it's a silent film, a lot of the emotion is conveyed through what the actors are doing rather than the written words on the screen. And it's a true testament to all of their acting ability and to the visual storytelling of Lois Weber. we see this woman come home after a long night. Her mother is worried sick about her, and then she looks down, and we cut to a shot of her brand new shoes. Her mother tells her, "You can't tell your father. He'll be furious." This film made me furious. The fact that this is the world that this woman lived in, it's terrible, it's awful. It's certainly not a film that would make one feel good, but it did make me feel. It is a beautiful film, though tragic as it is. Unintentionally, I seem to have picked many films with sad themes in them. Mädchen in Uniform is not the least of which. Mädchen in Uniform is a German film. There are two versions that have the same actor, so I guess it was remade a few years later, but I watched the original from 1931. Mädchen translates to girls, so the film is Girls in Uniform. The film is sometimes known as the first lesbian film, at least the re-upload on YouTube that I saw was called that. But I gotta be honest, it made me uncomfortable for one of the same reasons I was uncomfortable in Grease Rise of the Pink Ladies, and that's because of the relationship between a student and a teacher.
Weißt du, fast alle Kinder hier, die schwärmen nämlich für Fräulein von Bernburg. Oh Gott, wenn ich bloß das erstmal nicht mehr zu hören brauche. Ilse, ich beneide dich. Du schläfst in ihrem Schlafsaal. Oh Gott, oh Gott, oh Gott, oh Gott. Da ist es wahr. Sie küsst.
The film establishes that many of the girls love this one teacher and that she kisses them on their foreheads every night before they sleep. And, well, I'll just play this clip for you.
Knutsch jede ab. Wunderbar. Pass mal auf, Manuela. Jetzt komm ich dran.
Unfortunately, the school child was 14 and a half, but still 14. And no, I don't like it because it's lesbian. It's still gross. She's still a child. This is her superior. This is not a good thing. And I think many of the characters in the film are right to reprimand the teacher for her frankly inappropriate behavior. I should clarify though that in Germany the age of consent is 14. While I think that this is not good and gross, I have to acknowledge that I'm an American. I'm not in this culture. Even if I write off the age thing, which I'm not, but even if I did, it's still a power imbalance because she's her teacher, she's her superior. It's still inappropriate even if she was 18. As for the rest of the film, I liked it. It's got the charm of an 80s high school movie with a bunch of rabble-rousers trying to stick it to the man, or woman in this case. It is an all-girls school, including the teachers. It was a fun movie, but the main plot revolves around the girls not liking the conditions of the school, with that not really being resolved, and this one student's relationship to her teacher. And I gotta be honest, neither of those things I felt were particularly good. The B-plot of the kids trying to make the school better, or at least tell their parents what's going on, is one thing, but it's not really focused on, and thus it's not really developed, and thus it's not really that great. It's just kind of sad, especially when nothing actually gets done. But then this student, again, this girl, this minor, this student gets to the point where she is absolutely distraught and heartbroken over not being able to be with her teacher. I think it's fine. It's probably objectively good. It just wasn't my style. Maybe the remake is better. We're gonna jump forward about 30 years and also overseas to the United States of America with The Children's Hour. The Children's Hour is the first Audrey Hepburn film that I've watched, and I gotta say, I get it. She's an incredible actress. I can see why many people like her. And her co-star was great too. Shirley MacLaine, who looks a distracting amount like Florence Pugh, was incredible in this film. The film follows two women who own and teach at a boarding school for young girls, younger than 14 and a half. There's a reason why it's called The Children's Hour. It's because children are actually central to the plot of the film. This one little girl who is a real troublemaker and doesn't like being at the school, it starts a rumor based in some truth based on certain things that she overheard from certain sources, that these two women were in a relationship. And in the United States in 1961, that was frowned upon. Heck, teachers can get called out on Twitter today for having rainbows in their classrooms, let alone two teachers being lovers. I mean, this film is so absolutely still relevant today. Can you believe it's based on a play from 1934? The screenplay and the director may have both been men, but with the play being written by a woman and with the two main characters being women, I think it's safe to still call this women's cinema. It's an incredible piece of art. These two women's lives are basically unraveling, and throughout the entire film, Shirley MacLaine is realizing that it really was based in the truth after all. She had been lying to herself, hiding her feelings for Audrey Hepburn's character. Audrey Hepburn's character was going through her own thing of trying to get married to a man who Shirley MacLaine's character was very jealous of, and it's actually a really well-written relationship. They never cheat. They just feel. It's incredible. It really is an incredible film to watch, although I will give a trigger warning, but no spoilers, that there is suicide in this film. And it's also done beautifully. This film still doesn't explicitly show the body. The final scene in which the characters sees this event having happened after the fact, unfortunately, it's also tragically beautiful. It tells you everything you need to know without explicitly showing you. And it is heart-wrenching. If you're looking for a happy gay love story, don't look here, it's not this one. This film is absolutely sad to watch. It is a tragedy, really. But it's still beautiful. If you can handle the subject matter, I do recommend watching it. Although it is highly homophobic, and again, there is a character who takes their own life. Okay, so speaking of adapted works, Fried Green Tomatoes, based on a book, which is very gay. The film isn't, but it still deserves to be here. Okay, I swear that I didn't just look at lesbian media for this video. This film, while not explicitly sapphic, it's very hinted at. They received pushback from the studio, but it's still a great movie. Iggy and Ruth honestly might as well be lovers in the film. I really saw the love that they had for each other, and I wish that they were able to fully explore it like it was in the book. This film isn't just about two lesbians in the early 20th century, it's actually about female empowerment. The film jumps between time periods. The present, which the film was released in 1992, so it's probably late 80s, early 90s, and the early 20th century, where Iggy and Ruth are. It's honestly a really fun film to watch, seeing how all of these characters face their trials and tribulations and grow into themselves, empowering themselves, beating out the people who are trying to keep them down. I should give another trigger warning for domestic abuse, because there is that in this movie. Don't worry, he gets what's coming to him. This film about female empowerment is worth every penny, and so is the next one, Disney's Mulan from 1998. Mulan is based on the Chinese story The Ballad of Mulan, about a woman who dresses as a man to join the army. This is something that's happened in our own history. Many women cross-dressed in the Civil War, and it didn't stop after the Civil War, which is great. But Mulan, well, many people have read Mulan as transmasc. I have not. Mulan is a great, wonderful, funny musical movie taking place in ancient China, and seeing this woman not only assimilate into male culture, but actually impress all of them in a world where women are expected to be silent in the presence of a man unless spoken to. It's actually great to see all of them trust her. Once everyone finds out that she's a woman, her battle buddies defend her as much as they can. It's really a great film to watch. I highly recommend it. It's on Disney+. Of course, there's also plenty of physical media options to watch it. It also stars the wonderful Ming-Na Wen, who actually didn't do any of the singing parts, but neither did Princess Jasmine in Aladdin. I think it's fun that both Mulan and Princess Jasmine have the same singing voice, but they're played by different actors. That's a fun little tidbit of information. The songs were great, albeit a little rooted in misogyny and the patriarchy, but also that's kind of the world that the film is in, and they're talking about it. While they don't address it as much as Grease Rise of the Pink Ladies did, it's still a fantastic film and very much worth your time. The animation in this film is absolutely incredible, some of the best that I've seen out of Walt Disney Animation Studios, and I would just love to see more films done in this style. I also have to say, it was a little odd hearing young Ming-Na Wen's voice. I had been watching Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., so I've been used to a more present Ming-Na Wen, but she was a teenager when she did this.
Correction, I got confused with the age of her character. She was born in 1963, so she would have actually been in her mid-30s when the movie came out, which means she was probably in her early 30s when she recorded her lines. But, oh my gosh, she was in her early 30s when she played Mulan? What the heck? I don't know why it makes sense to me for her to be in her 50s in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., but for her to be in her 30s when making Mulan. I guess it's because Mulan is a teenager, but Agent May is like the same age that Ming-Na Wen was. So I don't know what's going on.
It almost didn't sound like her, although I think maybe not seeing her face probably had something to do with that. Staying in East Asia, there's a Korean film by Boo Ji-young called Cart, which is about a bunch of women who work for a grocery store that form a union and go on strike. They're being mistreated by their higher-ups. They're not getting the pay that they need. Some of them had to sign contracts that overtly screwed them over. I think this is something that'll very much hit home with younger millennials and Generation Z, because we all stand with the worker and against the corporation. Cart was also viewed in the women's cinema unit of my Intro to Screen Studies class, if I remember correctly, and it was a really good one to watch because, like the others, this is also about female empowerment. The women rise up against the man, and unfortunately the movie doesn't really end with them getting everything that they want, but things like this take time. So I'm still really glad that I watched it. Our final piece is Kunk on Earth, a mockumentary series by Philomena Kunk, who I did not realize was not a real person, which was on Netflix, and it's incredibly funny. It's a limited series, so I doubt there's going to be a season 2, but oh my gosh, this is one of the greatest things I've ever seen. It's very much juvenalian satire, definitely satirizing the way that documentaries like it are. Philomena is asking a bunch of historical experts who definitely aren't aware that they're in a comedy series all of these questions, but saying things like, could you keep your answer to the length of a soundbite?
What was the Soviet Onion? Do we know if China has a roof?
There's this great bit where Philomena asks someone, could you say that Jesus was the first celebrity victim of cancel culture? And then she starts explaining, but then Philomena cuts her off and says, oh no, I wasn't asking you, I was saying, could you say that into the X camera? It'd be great for a trailer. And honestly, that was just so amazing. And she actually did it too, which is incredible. So many of the jokes were funny. I think the only one that didn't really land for me was the running gag in which she would always bring up, Pump Up the Jam, and then just play the music video for a little bit. Every episode. I wasn't too big a fan of that, but hey, sometimes a few shreds of lettuce get into your taco. I guess that metaphor only works if you dislike lettuce as much as I do and think that tacos are severely improved without it, but I digress. For Women's History Month, you should definitely check out History as Told by a Woman.
Conk on Earth!
As well as everything else, but again, only if you really have the bandwidth for it for some of these more tragic tales. I would say the ones that are least likely to make you feel sad are Fried Green Tomatoes, Mulan, and Kunk on Earth. Greetings to all who wish to be greeted. I'm MegaPacKid, and this is my game shelf, and this is Women's History Month, and it's gonna be a good one because lesbians can finally get married in Lesbos. Shout out Martin Garnham Photography. I wonder if they do weddings.